So what is going on, everyone? This is Fabi here, and today we are here to determine whether or not the Air 2017 is still worth it in 2018 and perhaps for the next few years. Now, this is the entry-level MacBook Air, so this is the cheapest MacBook that Apple offers. Of course, they still have the Mac Mini, which is cheaper than this, but that is just not a worthy computer in my opinion, whereas this is still plenty powerful for a student or for someone who just browses the web and doesn't do something that is specifically too powerful, like video editing and stuff like that, but it can still handle those tasks without any issues. So, first of all, we are going to talk about design and portability. Now, when you look at the design of this, you can definitely tell that it was made by Apple. You can see the finishing touches everywhere. It's got a nice design, sleek design. It's not the thinnest laptop anymore. I don't think it ever was, but it was a very thin laptop, especially for its time. Now, even the MacBook Pro, the newer MacBook Pro, is thinner. Of course, not at the front, where the tapered design of the MacBook Air definitely makes it slimmer. But at the back, the MacBook Air is not as thin anymore. But that's not necessarily a hindrance, in my opinion. That allows for things like full-fledged USB-A ports and a normal MagSafe connector like they used to have, not the USB-C charger. And so those things are definitely nice. Now, my biggest gripe with the design is when you look at the front, you can see the bezels are huge. Now, I don't understand why Apple does this with the MacBook Air and the iMac as well. Even when you look at the iMac Pro, you can see that it's got huge bezels, and those just don't look professional, and it makes the experience less seamless, which is something that I personally don't like, but maybe they'll change their mind with the MacBook Air and with the iMac in the future, especially given that products such as the MacBook Pro over here have much slimmer bezels. I'm not saying that they're super slim. I know that other laptops do have slimmer bezels, but this is definitely not up to par for 2018. Talking about the design still, you can see that at the back it's still got the glowing apple, which is definitely a sign of an Apple laptop. It's not the case anymore with newer MacBooks, but I do like the way it was back in the day, and I am definitely going to miss this on newer MacBooks. Portability, this is not heavy, this is not huge. The bezels do make it bigger than it has to be, but it's definitely portable. You can take it with you in your backpack and not feel the weight of it pretty much. So from that point, it's definitely a big plus. Talking about the screen, now this is one of the areas where you can definitely tell that the MacBook Air is not that new anymore. When you look at the screen, the resolution is not that crisp, so it's not a retina display, but that's not even the problem. You can see in this clip, when you look at it from off angles, it definitely doesn't look good, and it just makes the colors look washed out or too saturated. So it's definitely not a good thing if you're into photo editing or video editing and definitely care about the colors of what you're producing. This is not the best way to go, or at least if you're not working on an external monitor. If you come from a screen that's got great colors, great resolution and stuff like that, you're definitely going to notice the screen. But if you come from a normal Windows laptop that's perhaps not as new and has still a TN panel, this is not going to be a downgrade. It's not great, but it's definitely not something that will kill the experience as per se. I can definitely get used to this even when coming from my MacBook Pro. It's noticeable, but after a few days I feel like you don't even notice anymore. Now going on to keyboard and trackpad. This thing doesn't have the Force Touch trackpad, so that's a big minus in my opinion. I do use the Force Touch from time to time, but that's not even the biggest selling point for me. For me, the biggest selling point is the fact that with the Force Touch, wherever you touch on the trackpad, it's got the same feel to it. So on these older ones, if you press at the top of this touchpad, you have to press harder in order for the touch to register, which is not the case on the newer MacBook Pros. You can press however hard or light you want on the whole surface of the touchpad, and it's going to be the same. The keyboard is definitely great if you are used to normal keyboards and don't like the idea of the butterfly switch mechanism that they have going on with the MacBook Pros now. But in my opinion, I do like the tactile feel of the MacBook Pro. These keys just feel a little bit mushier, but they do have more travel. But if you're writing a lot on your laptop, I feel like the MacBook Air might be a better decision because it's not as loud of a keyboard when you're pressing, and the longer key travel makes it less painful for your fingers if you're typing for a long time. The fourth thing, and one of the most important things that we have to talk about, is performance. Now, this is not a beast in any way. shape or form, but if you are doing the things that I told you about at the beginning of this video, browsing the web, typing resumes and essays for university, is definitely going to be more than enough, and it's going to suffice even for the occasional video edit or photo edit and stuff like that, because it's got still a 5th generation Core i5 from Intel, a dual core, but it's hyper-threaded, so it shows up as 4 cores. So it's not that great, but it has plenty of performance for the everyday usage, and because it's not a Retina display, it doesn't have to push as many pixels, so that's definitely a boost when it comes to the overall flow of the OS on this machine. You can see here some benchmarks. They're nothing to write home about, but they're more than adequate, about as powerful as a new 2017 12-inch MacBook with the Core i5, I think. So this should be at least a little bit better than that because it doesn't throttle as much. The 12-inch MacBook is great for bursts of CPU usage, but if you actually use it a lot to push out videos and stuff like that, it will throttle soon because of the 5-watt TDP. On the graphics side, it still has an Intel HD 6100, so that's definitely not great, but it will suffice for, you know, Minecraft and games that are not as heavy. It does still do good in games that are older, so for example, titles from 2010 and perhaps earlier. I think those will be definitely manageable on this machine. Going on to battery life, we are actually going to check this out right now. So we have 82% battery life, and this machine shows that it still has 10 hours and 30 minutes now left with the brightness at maximum. So I wasn't doing anything on this machine for the last 10 minutes, so granted it was idling, but with 82% left and brightness at maximum, with it showing 10 hours and 30 minutes, that I think is definitely something that is very good and more than enough for days of work. If you're going to be playing on it or exporting videos, don't expect more than 4 hours perhaps, but if you have a mixed workload of browsing the web, typing some Word documents, and perhaps playing a bit of Minecraft of some older game, I think you should be able to go through a day without charging this, which is definitely all that you need from a laptop. Now on to fan noise. I recorded a little bit of the fan noise while I was running the Heaven benchmark that is just pushing the GPU of the machine, and it's definitely audible. It's about as audible as the 2 fans on my MacBook Pro. This only has a fan, but the kicker here is that the MacBook Air's fans don't run when it's idling, so at least when it's idling, it's definitely silent. They might run sometimes, but it's not like on my MacBook Pro, which is no loud machine, but the fans are always running at 2000 RPM, and you can definitely hear them if there's absolutely no noise in the room. But otherwise, both machines are completely silent. The MacBook Air takes the edge a little bit, but only having one fan is definitely going to be limiting it when it comes to cooling the machine down. So is the MacBook Air worth it? Well, it comes down to your personal needs. If you only need this machine, as I said, for light tasks that perhaps an iPad can't do just yet, then yes, it is worth it. If you look at the pricing of MacBooks nowadays, the MacBook 12-inch should eventually replace this machine, but for now, especially in my country, you can't find the MacBook 12-inch for as cheap as this one. The MacBook 12-inch Retina is about $400 more expensive than this one, which is definitely a big price to pay if you are just using it as a, I don't know, as a machine for Facebook and stuff like that. So if you're just doing that, I would not suggest going for the 12-inch MacBook. And of course, that one only has one port, which is definitely limiting. With this one, you can plug in an SD card, you can plug in 2 USBs and a Thunderbolt display, or a Thunderbolt SSD, external SSD, and you still have the MagSafe for the charging capability. So if you want a computer that's not as expensive, does everything you want it to, and has a decent enough screen when it comes to the dimension of it, because obviously the screen of the 12-inch is of a much better quality. This one is just bigger, and obviously you can see more on it. If those things are what you want, this is still worth it. With the way CPUs have advanced in the last few years, it's not that big of a drawback that this has a CPU from 2015, and this should still work fine at least until 2021 or 2022 for normal day-to-day usage. And for about $900 to $1,000, this is definitely a computer that is great for day-to-day use. It's sleek, stylish, it looks nice, and it does everything you could ask it to do. So, if you guys like this video, make sure to like it, leave a comment in the description down below if you want to see more about this laptop. Anyways, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and stay tuned for more content. Peace out, guys. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.